Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second webinar in the series around our data center sales motion. Today, we're going to be talking about data system protection, those real hot topics within the industry right now. So what we've done is over the last sort of 5 or 6 weeks, we've listened to what our customers are talking about, listened to what things are happening out in the channel, and we're going to discuss those hot topics today. On the webinar, we have Marc Lucas and Chris Steele from Commvault. And we also have Tom Sargeant here, who's the Chief Technology Officer from Veritas. So good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Morning.
Okay, so the first point we're going to go through today is why hire a data protection officer? What sort of attributes are we looking for when we're hiring a data protection officer within the workplace? So Tom, would you like to take that first?
Yeah, certainly. I think a lot of companies need to see if they even need a data protection officer. But it's particularly important if you're systematically monitoring individuals on a large scale. And that means, do you have a lot of personally identifiable information that you're actually scanning, processing, using to monetize areas of your business? You probably do need a data protection officer. And I think it's not all about the technology. Having a technology background really helps. Also, having a legal background helps. And the reason I think the data protection officer role is so important is it's someone to have a finger on the pulse of the business as to how you're managing your data, how you're managing that personally identifiable information in your business, and to take the business to task where there could be unnecessary risk on some of the upcoming legislation, such as GDPR in the general commercial space or MiFID II in the banking space.
Great. And Mark, have you got anything you'd like to add on that point at all?
Yeah, just out of interest, are we going to put the slides up as well, or we're just going to go for a more sort of conversation? What's easier for you guys?
So what we'll do is, if you want to ask me to push through the slides, that's absolutely fine, or talk around the points, however you want to do it.
Yeah, great. So, so if you wouldn't mind passing me the ball, if that's okay, Dean.
Of course.
But yeah, totally agree with what Tom was saying, that there are certain types of company, obviously, where they need to have a data protection officer, which I'm going to touch on in just a moment. But I think it's, and something else that Tom mentioned is, it's not just a technology solution. In fact, there isn't a single solution to put a great big green tick for everything GDPR related. Is actually going to be both data management and also security solutions. But before you even thunder on towards the technology, it's getting the relevant people in the room from the different areas of the business. I know Tom mentioned on the financial side of things as well, with personal data, getting the relevant people in the room and defining those tasks and processes first. So what I've got a few slides here that I'm just going to first of all share my screen, which would be a good idea, and then just talk about what you need to think about around GDPR. And obviously, there's a lot of headlines around GDPR. It's really thundering up on the horizon. It's one of the strictest data protection regulations in the world, and I'm sure that all of SHI's customers they're probably getting fairly sort of sick about hearing about GDPR, which I can understand, because there are a lot of businesses out there, a lot of vendors who are badging something with GDPR, and there's a lot of noise out there. But it's really, where realistically do we need to start? And getting a data protection officer is key for those types of specific types of customer. But it's, as I said, it's getting those people in a room, thinking about how the whole, every European individual has got data that they need to. They could contact a company and say, okay, I want that data erased, I want it corrected. And it doesn't just mean that you have to be in the EU for this to actually affect you, because I know that obviously the UK is going through this fairly painful Brexit process at the moment, but it doesn't matter. when we do eventually leave Europe, as long as we are doing business in Europe, then GDPR very much affects you. And there's quite a lot of principles that are part of GDPR. There's like 99 of them in total, but there's 51 of them that if you don't meet the requirements, and if, for example, the ICO, the regulatory board, come to do a GDPR compliance check on you, there's 51 of them that have actually got some fines against them. And one of those is about getting a DPO on board. So yeah, you've got to think about, first of all, do we need to get a DPO? Are we processing large amounts of data, or is it specific categories of data that are fairly sensitive? If you're working in the public sector, for example, very likely you are going to need to take on a DPO. And in fact, yes, it tends to be the larger size businesses where they will need to take on a DPO, but actually it's probably good business practice to employ one anyway. But yeah, if you should be taking on a DPO and you're not, you can see the potential fines that are there as well. So one of the things I took away from the first article was it's all about, and this is something that I mentioned earlier, is that companies need to be thinking about GDPR now. Yes, there's a lot of noise, but they need to be sitting down and starting the real meat and potato processes around getting the relevant people in the room, defining those tasks and processes with what they need to do with this personal data, how that affects how they deal with their customers, but also their internal policies as well. And then once they've sifted that out, then deciding what technology they will need to have a look at. That's going to make a big difference.
And Mark, you mentioned getting the relevant people in the room. What define the sort of relevant people within an organisation that need to take a hold of this?
Well, going back to what Tom was mentioning earlier with financial, with personal data, with MiFID data as well. Obviously, you're going to need to get someone in from the financial department. You're going to need to get somebody in from the legal department. Anywhere really where they're using personal data, and bearing in mind personal data is not just their customers, it's also internally as well. So you're going to need to get someone from HR in the room. Obviously, IT need to be in there as well, because eventually it's going to involve technology or different technology solutions. And then, obviously employing a data protection officer. It's not just going to be one or two departments. Pretty much it's going to encompass all of them. And I would say a really good start with where you need to go to get this battle plan together is ICO again, this regulatory board, have been very sort of forthright about what you need to do. Their website is a fantastic resource, but also there's a really good 12 steps guide, which we're more than happy to share to you, to send out to your customers, around doing the basic stuff like doing a data protection impact assessment, defining those tasks and processes. And I would say with where we are at the moment, it's very unlikely that if you haven't made a start or towards being GDPR compliant, that you're going to get yourself ready by May the 25th next year. In fact, you probably would have had to have started about 12 to 24 months ago. So now it's a case of deciding where you think you will be GDPR compliant on certain tasks and processes. And for those that you won't be GDPR compliant, or if technology is getting in the way, so if you're using tape, for example, that could be quite problematic with erasing or correcting personal data. It's then deciding, okay, well, these are the areas we're not going to be GDPR compliant. At the very least, let's get a battle plan together and decide, okay, we won't be over the line by May the 25th, but this is the date that we will. And then when someone does that compliance check and you produce this plan with the deadlines as to when you think you will be 100% GDPR compliant, you're a lot more likely to get that tick in the box than if you don't have that plan.
Yeah, so it's all about showing that plan's in place. It's not about the 25th of May. everything has to be all singing or dancing. As long as you can demonstrate that you have a strategy and a plan in place to become GDPR compliant, then that's what people are looking for.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've seen a lot of organisations who are taking this quite seriously now have looked at maybe engaging specialist compliancy organisations to have the conversations across maybe the board or the head of departments. And they've begun to map out the regulations to particular roles in the organisation. So they can start to tell the CIO, you're on the hook for these regulations. They can start to tell the open DPO role that you're responsible for these parts of the regulations. And head of IT, you're on the hook for where all the data is, not necessarily the application itself, but where does this information sit within our business? If someone's already got a viable cloud strategy, which cloud is your personally identifiable information sitting on? Is it within the EU? Is it hosted in the US? How do you make sure that only the right people have got access to that data? So, again, I think it's about collaboration within an organisation and working towards a plan. And a lot of organisations are doing exactly what you suggest and taking that risk-based approach. Can they do it all on time? Maybe not. Can they do it all at all? Maybe not. But what's the important areas they have to address, and really scoring them in terms of risk, how quickly they need to get things done. Brilliant.
So would we like to move on to the second question and move on to potentially the next slide?
No problem. Let me just topic number 2, please.
Yeah. So topic number 2.
Cool. So, so I was just suggesting, who'd you like to kick off first?
Yes. So, well, if you'd like to lead again with this one, Mark, and then we'll just jump in as and when.
Yeah, no problem at all. That's fine. So, on endpoint data detection and response, it's really thinking about from an endpoint perspective, because I know the article was talking about potential ransomware attacks and what can you do if you have a ransomware attack, about how can you recover from that. And as far as endpoints are concerned, just to very briefly go through some of the functionality that we provide there. It's about, first of all, making sure those laptops are backed up on a regular basis, and we have ways of doing that where you don't have to be connected to a VPN. It's just, as long as you've got a decent bandwidth, it will be done on an automated basis. You don't even have to think about it. So there's no real impact on the end user with their specific device. It's done for them. But again, done on a secure basis, because obviously that's incredibly important. But if they do have a ransomware attack on that particular endpoint, the next strategy is, okay, well, how do we get ourselves where we can carry on business as normal? And it's being able to, go online, use self-service tools to be able to restore either documents or actually do a fully fledged backup and restore of that particular device so you can carry on business as normal. But doing that without impacting too much on that internal IT department, providing those self-service tools. But if the worst comes to the worst, if you detect that a laptop has a ransomware attack or it's been stolen, you can just do that remote wipe as well. But on the ransomware side of things, obviously we are, in the same way as Veritas, we're a data management set of solutions. But when it comes to ransomware, we do have ransomware features built into our product. So it's detecting if you have a ransomware attack. And this is for both the servers that you have on premise, but also for those laptops, that if we pick up suspicious activity, we will send out the relevant alerts. And in some cases, we've already found that our software is picking up potential ransomware attacks before some of the security software vendors as well. Being able to, if we're backing up to specific mount paths, only Commvault can talk to them. That's another way of doing it. But more importantly, if you're looking at what's happening on premise, moving away from endpoints, it's having that robust approach for data management where if you do have a ransomware attack, well, let's rewind back to a point in time where you didn't have it, and then you can carry on business as normal. And in fact, we've got lots of enhanced data management features that go well beyond that as well. So you can have almost like a gold copy backup, which is away from your standard network. So you've got that to refer to that won't be potentially affected by a ransomware attack on your system as well. So yeah, there's really, as far as endpoints are concerned, there's a lot of things that you need to think about. Obviously, there's the security software, the EDR software, or solutions that are out there, but what we're talking about is that Commvault can actually help you with, if the worst comes to the worst, we can pick up if there is a ransomware attack, so that's another line of defense, but also enabling you to be up and running as quickly as possible, so you're not, because obviously if there is a ransomware attack, you're literally hemorrhaging money, because it's affecting how you run as a business. It can affect your reputation as well, so the quicker you can get yourself back online, the better, and that's very much what we can provide for you.
Yeah, we've all seen the impact of ransomware attacks, for example, in the NHS, in some more recent high-profile US organizations who are actually responsible for credit scoring us, so that's quite worrying. But I think education is always a good thing to do, and prevention is better than the cure. And whilst I would suggest that from a Veritas perspective, we've got things that would necessarily identify immediate ransomware attacks, one thing that we do internally is regularly phish our own staff. And the most embarrassing thing is when you click on one of those links and you redirect it to an IT page that says, haha, we've just phished you, go and do this extra training. So we're preparing ourselves as an organization to actually educate users to be a little bit more aware of the sort of attacks that come into organizations. And we recently spun out of the Semantic entity, who probably got a little bit more on the actual ransomware and AV side. Again, it's really interesting looking at file analytics to see if dubious users are accessing your files, or if a particular user is accessing sensitive data more frequently than they would usually do. And so there are some really interesting broader industry approaches to both preventing the ransomware attacks and from a more traditional approach to actually be able to recover to a known good state rapidly if you're subject to any form of attack, be it someone trying to steal your data, encrypt your data for their own personal gain. And the most important thing, I think, is to test whatever solution an organization has in place. As the poor customers who have invested heavily in and I use the sort of our industry technology, backing up data for years and years and years and years, did they ever test that they could recover it? Yep. So again, having the robust procedures in place to make sure that your environment is recoverable regardless of your technology choice is massively important.
And also, a lot of it is, particularly with endpoint, it's deciding what to back up on that device. You know, if you've got 20, 30 devices out, 20, 30,000 devices out in the field, then it's all about selecting what applications are being backed up from those devices as well, and having that functionality for an end user as well.
Yeah, I don't care about my laptop. I care about the data that's on my laptop.
Yeah.
Because IT can give me a new laptop. I don't care about my phone. IT can give me a new phone. It's the data that's on my phone that's important. And if that's in a cloud, if that's on a shared service such as OneDrive from Microsoft, I know I can get that data back easily. So I don't necessarily even need my endpoint to be restored. What I do need is to have confidence that the data that's on it is secure, so that if I do lose my laptop or my phone, no one else can get the data. I can recover it from a third-party location.
Exactly. Have you got anything you would like to add to this, Mark?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're going to be breaking out an agreement quite a lot today, Tom. But it's having different things in your arsenal about how you would approach a potential ransomware attack. I definitely agree that carrying out those internal exercises and getting right back to the meat and potato around if something goes wrong, regardless if it's a ransomware attack or you have a system failure, how quickly can you recover? How confident are you that when you get that knock on the door, or if you're an IT department, because all roads will lead back to you when something goes wrong. Do you have the right suite of weapons to actually deal with losing your data? And it's having the ransomware protection, but it's also, as Tom was saying, if something goes wrong, how quickly can we get ourselves up and running? And again, with Commvault, we don't particularly care where the data is. We'll back it up for you, and it's regardless if it's on-premise, regardless if it's up in the cloud, software as a service offerings, and then obviously we're talking about endpoints. If something goes wrong, how quickly can you be up and running? And that's very much what the set of tools that we will provide, because we're very much data experts, and we want to enable our customers to be data experts as well, to know where that data is, but also to not only get value out of that data, but when the proverbial hits the fan, being able to restore as quickly as possible and carry on business as normal, because we don't want to impact at all on them financially, but also from a reputational point of view as well.
Brilliant. So should we move on to the third and final article for this webinar?
Yeah, fantastic. So I know two of these topics have been around GDPR, but it is one of the hot topics, especially as we are getting closer to that date of May the 25th next year, and I think businesses have been aware for quite some time that they need to be GDPR compliant. But as I said, there's been so much noise. Where the hell do they start? So this really is touching on what I was talking about earlier, that this is the strategy or suggested strategy to take around sitting down and defining those tasks and processes first. Because if you approach this from a pure technology perspective, there's not a single silver bullet solution for GDPR from a technology perspective, but also look to see what you've got, which is already working, which is already going to get you over the line for being GDPR compliant regarding those tasks, those processes, and again, really, and I can't stress this enough, thinking about what changes do we need to make to our policies internally as well, because if those internal policies aren't defined, if you're thinking of if within your company there are a third-party data sharing tools, like, for example, Dropbox, that are being used, or that the data is somewhere on an unsecured public cloud, that's a potential data breach. So, thinking about those first of all, and then sitting down and deciding, okay, what technology do we need to have a look at? And typically, from a data management perspective, we find that if Commvault, for example, aren't the weapon of choice, that it means that the customer's got lots of different point solutions. There can be up to 20 of them that they're using. And under the hood, you'll have different code bases, different management platforms, a huge amount of complexity. And actually, as far as GDPR is concerned, there's a huge amount of risk as well. Because in each one of those data silos, could be a potential data breach, for example, or you've got data that's falling through the cracks, or you have data that's up in the public cloud, up in software as a service offerings, up on laptops being used by your mobile workforce that you won't have the same visibility of that if it was on premise. And then how the hell do you tie all of that together into a solution that's going to enable you to, GDPR very much is about, yes, protecting personal data, but also about privacy by design. about ensuring that you're not hanging on to that data for absolutely any longer than you absolutely have to as well, and having ideally a single set of policies about trying to automate as much as possible. And then when you look at unstructured data, files, folders, emails, that data traditionally is not indexed. So that's, again, another potential Achilles heel. So with Commvault, very much what we is we don't care where your data is. You'll be able to back it up, but it will then end up in a single virtual repository of data, a single management platform, single code base, just about removing all that complexity, giving you the tools to automate everything that you need to do with your data as well, but also, more importantly, having that single virtual repository of data. So for things like compliance searching, your data will be there. If it's structured or unstructured, we'll index it and we'll give you that visibility as well, which is incredibly important.
Yeah, and one word that's really stuck out for me in the last couple of minutes of you talking, Mark, is the word visibility. And I think that,
yes,
as I say, it's key for GDPR, and being able to demonstrate that you know where your data is at all times. Tom, would you like to add on that point at all?
Yeah, I think we can treat GDPR as an opportunity, not just a burden that's going to drive further costs into a business. We can use it as an opportunity to help drive some business, because regardless of the analytics tools that are used to find out where data is in an environment, it's a great opportunity to maybe age out obsolete data. So look at what's no longer of value to an organization and remove it. So that significantly reduces cost because you're freeing up capacity on existing storage infrastructure. It's reducing cost to back up. And then when you actually migrate everything into a cloud storage environment, it reduces your monthly billing cost, because you're not paying to store obsolete information. And one of these random statistics that came up recently is we estimate organizations are going to store the same amount of data that they've ever stored to date incrementally over the next 2 years. So data volumes are just going to grow ridiculously. So we need some sort of automation to remove unnecessary data from people's environments so they can keep their business running.
Yeah.
So the 15% of data that organizations have that is truly of value, that keeps the lights on, that is profitable and helps them make more money or accelerate their business, identify that, keep hold of that, get rid of all the legacy data you don't need. And so, again, the main areas I think that we've all learned about are having a robust business process to actually guide your organization through the GDPR conundrum. And then looking at running through your traditional security, your storage environment, looking at data minimization, and frankly mapping those responsibilities onto different roles in the organization is really important. I think we've all heard that pretty loud and clear today.
Exactly. And as you said, Tom, this is an opportunity to really look at your existing data set, looking at how, giving yourself visibility of it and enabling yourself to utilize the data for your business to better effect than you've ever been able to before, and it's moving organisations down that path to enable that to happen. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Mark?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And again, I've said this already, that it's been great. There's been a huge amount of breaking out of agreement here. That Tom mentioned about the opportunity angle as well. That if you get yourself GDPR compliant, then it's also a way of easing how you're going to be doing business in the 26, 27 countries that actually fall under GDPR as well, because very much it's going to be the gold standard that the countries that you want to do business within Europe are going to be expecting as well. So I totally agree that it's not just a burdensome task or multiple tasks that you need to have a look at. It's also thinking about, well, where can we get ourselves sort of ship shape and Bristol fashion, make sure that we're actually looking at ways of reducing costs around data management, simplifying it, automating it. But if we hit this GDPR compliance standard, it's knowing that you will be able to more easily do business in those all those other countries where they're going to be on the same level of compliance as well.
Exactly. It's very much like having an internal audit for an organisation. Everybody within an organisation, when they know they're going to be internally audited, it's all systems go and let's get through this process. But out of every single internal audit comes better processes and people will find better ways to do business out the back of it. And I think companies should treat GDPR just in exactly the same way. It's a set of rules and regulations that we need to abide by, but out the back of that, it's hopefully, and it will do, show better opportunities for our business going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you're going to be, for example, analysing your data a lot more, which you'd expect under GDPR as well, that actually you can probably get a huge amount of value out of that data and give yourself a competitive edge around all this data that you're collecting, not just looking at it as its backup is something that we have to do. It's moving beyond that and moving towards a more complete data management strategy, but looking at your data and saying, okay, well, what trends can we track with this? How can we do business better? So yeah, I totally agree with Tom that it's not just a burden. There's actually a huge amount of opportunity, and we're seeing customers who are actually now finally realising that that there could actually be some real value from this financially, but also enhancing their business reputation as well.
Brilliant. You got anything you'd like to add to that, Tom? Or?
I think the learnings that I've made through our own GDPR readiness assessments within Veritas, my organisation, are that we've had to take a risk-based approach to ensure that we're addressing the most important areas first in our business. We're looking at reducing cost to store legacy information in our business. We're looking at making sure that we're as bulletproof as possible for when we're working with our business partners and our customers and our suppliers, that we can ensure adherence to GDPR, which frankly is going to be a business requirement when talking to all of those suppliers and customers. So we've learned an awful lot about the processes ourselves internally. We've eaten our own dog food, and we believe we're well on the way to compliance. So it doesn't have to be painful, but it does have to be very well thought out and acted on very quickly.
Brilliant. Have you got anything else you'd like to add, Mark, at all?
No, again, I think it's definitely worth taking that approach, and eating your own dog food is essential, because obviously you need to know some of the pain points that that our customers, for example, are going to be experiencing. I think the best way of doing that is actually rolling up your sleeves and getting stuck in, and okay, well, are we going to be GDPR compliant, and making sure that we're thundering towards that in the same way that our customers are. And obviously it's again looking at the right tools, but before that, it is getting those. It may well be fairly painful to get all of those relevant people in the room, but getting as many people in the room that from the various departments where they're handling personal data together, and having that initial brainstorming session. How do we even begin the process first, and then moving forward from there.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. We've kept it to 35 minutes, which is absolutely perfect. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thanks very much for all your time this morning. Obviously, next steps from here. If anybody would like to get in touch with SHI and see how we can help deliver that through our GDPR advisory services, or speak to your account managers, the details to contact us will be live underneath the video afterwards. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and have a good day.
Thanks, Rob.
Great. Thanks, everybody.